So in today's video, guys, we are going to talk about energy, and by the end of this video, once you guys have actually understood the true concept of energy, you will figure out why understanding energy will make you perhaps the most successful and the best version of yourself that you can ever be. And so in this episode, guys, we are basically going to talk about energy, and not in the boring physical way, but I'm going to use some complex abstracts in order for you to actually understand how you can really utilize energy in your favor. So in today's lesson, when we talk about energy, the idea of thermodynamics or thermal dynamics is basically what you guys learn about, especially in school when you come across the concept of energy. And so in thermodynamics, just like Newton's law, there are a few, important laws for you guys to understand. I'm not going to break down and elaborate each law specifically, but I'll keyword or highlight some of the most important principles that you should understand from the laws. And so the first law is, I want you guys to understand that, and this is perhaps a cliche one, is that energy is neither created nor destroyed. Created nor destroyed. And I'm sure, again, you guys have probably heard about this in primary school, or if you are studying physics, then you have probably heard about this law many times. But I want you guys to remember the deep implication of what it actually means. And so I want you guys to understand that in this universe, in your life, there's always some type of energy exchange. And that energy exchange is basically anything you do, not only physically speaking, as well as mentally speaking, spiritually speaking, whatever you do in your daily life, there's always some type of energy exchange. And so the way of how the laws of the universe works is that energy is basically everywhere. Energy is all around us. You have energy in yourself. Energy is in trees, in cars, in the rotation of the earth. Energy is basically everywhere. And I want you guys to obviously understand that concept, because the second law of thermodynamics basically talks the idea of entropy, or entropy, entropy, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check the correct definition for this. Entropy, yes. Entropy. Sorry, guys. Sometimes I'm not very good with spelling. And so I want you guys to understand that entropy is basically the measure of exchange of energy. So when energy transfers, entropy is basically the transfer that happens. So transfer of energy and transfer of energy. And entropy is understood as a equilibrium. And so if you like to extend the definition of entropy, in philosophical context, it's very often understood as chaos, or chaos. I would just put it as chaos. And so in physics, if we come back to physics, entropy very often can be abbreviated as heat. And from heat, we got something like going from hot to cold. And this is already the fundamentals of thermodynamics, especially if you guys are physics students. So this concept is probably very familiar to you. And so I want you guys to understand how the world works. And the way the world works is, imagine this is the world. This is your life. This is your, I'll just put it world, or essentially your reality. And imagine that your world or your life or your reality is a big chunk of chaos, because essentially that is what the world is. This is what the universe is. Universe is a big clump of entropy, a big clump of arbitrariness, a big clump of randomness. And so in other words, it's chaos. And so you, as a person, you have basically one objective in your reality. Your only objective in reality is to bring order to chaos. So you bring order, and order is, in many fundamental philosophical books, very often order is referred as masculine, or yin, as the Chinese like to call it. I'm not sure if you can see this. Let me just write it down here. Masculine or yin. You know yin and yang? If you're Chinese, you've probably heard about yin and yang many times, or if you do Kung Fu, you've probably heard about this as well. The point is that you, as a person, you have a sole objective to bring order to chaos. That's literally what it does. And so the reason, when we come back to thermodynamics, is the way the Earth works is the Earth is always in a constant urge to provide chaos. And why is that so? It's because Nietzsche meant this many times, and he mentioned this in his literature, is that in a world of disequilibrium, we have change. Because if there is imbalance in universe, it means change happens. When there's entropy, change happens. Because according to the law of thermodynamics, nothing in this universe has a greater objective than providing equilibrium. That's the objective of the universe. And so I want you guys to understand that with the sole objective of the universe, Nietzsche, I think I pronounced it correctly or not, with the sole objective of the universe providing disequilibrium, in other words chaos, your objective again is to provide order. And so now the question occurs, is like, how do I do that? And so I want you guys to understand the most important story of your life. And this is going to be super, super interesting. But this is very important for you guys to understand. It's because I want you guys to realize, how do I basically make my world, or become essentially a hero of my story? And so this is you, right? This is you. And for a second now, I want you guys to imagine that your life is basically like a movie. A movie. And so how movies work, right, is there's always a protagonist and there's always an antagonist. Antagonist and a protagonist. And so a protagonist is basically a hero, and an antagonist is a villain. And why movies are made like this, I don't fundamentally know, but just realize that in most literature, in most legends and myths and fairy tales, this is usually the fundamental characterization of our characters. It's literally a hero and a villain. And so for this abstract concept, which obviously you guys realize is very difficult to explain, I want you guys to understand that, realize that in your movie, you are the protagonist and the antagonist at the same time. You are the hero as well as the villain of your movie. And so let me explain why. If you watch every single type of movie that has ever been created and talks about a hero, there's always a cycle to how heroes become a hero. And so I won't break it down specifically, but I want you guys to understand that the hero always starts with a problem. And imagine that in your life. So you are basically born and you are, in a state of time where you suddenly have a problem. And so basically, let's assume that your problem here is that you are broke, that you are poor, or you're struggling in a family, you have some type of issues with society or with your family, and so that is basically your problem. And so, fuck.